Well, listen, tonight I want to talk with you about sacred spaces, my thoughts, right? Oh, wow, yeah, Ryan and I practiced that. It takes about 2 hours. I say it and then click. My thoughts, right? You know, we've gone through this series, we've talked about, and I'm just going to do a very quick recap. Sacred spaces being a place that we protect and invest what God has given us. So it's something we devote and we consecrate unto God in our life. First week, we talked about unplugged, getting away, disconnecting from the minutia, the craziness of life, in order to connect with our Creator and with the Lord, that He becomes our source. We then talked about my heart, sacred spaces, making that my heart. Where are we placing our trust? My friends was last week's. Who is influencing us? And am I creating an atmosphere or just being a part of it? But now, my thoughts. Perhaps one of the most sobering aspects of us as human beings. So much power in our thoughts. The thought life. Let's define what a thought is. Definition. An idea or opinion produced by thinking or occurring suddenly in the mind. The action of processing or thinking. An act of considering or remembering. The formation of opinions, ideas, etc. All right, so we all know what a thought is. You're thinking right now. I don't know what you're thinking. Those of you, when we ask, like, if you have one superpower and you say you could read people's minds, you're control freaks. That's what I have to say about that. But no, thoughts. So we know what they are. We're experiencing it all the time. But our mind as human beings, it's not just made up of something that causes us to react. We don't just react and have instinct. There's another step that makes us different than any other living being in the universe and in this world. Is we have an ability. We have an ability to contemplate and ponder. I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to read kind of the idea of what that is that's in us. We have understanding and we have reason. We can reason. Our mind is a reasoning faculty. God has given us the capacity to think. We can practice reflective thinking. We can practice that. You know what I'm talking about. No matter if you're 5 years old or 10 years old, you could be 5 and you could look up and say, I want to touch that. And you remember in your little head, Mom saying, don't touch it, it's hot. But curiosity says, I want to touch it. What is real hot? And then you go back and forth and touch it. And you burn yourself. And that's the child. But when we get older, we look at other things that we can reason, we can think about. We sit in classes, anyone who's gone to college here or is in school, professors teaching you to use analytical thinking and logic. And it's a gift. It's a gift from God. Yet at the same time, it can be very, very dangerous. Stopping a thought. Have you ever tried to stop a thought? You're thinking about something and then you're like, stop. And then all you start doing is you keep thinking about it more and more and more and more. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I think about something else that'll help me stop that thought. But when you're thinking about something else, you're still thinking about the previous thought because you're like, I'm trying to stop thinking about this thought by thinking about this thought and I'm still thinking about it. Does anyone else relate to that or am I the only crazy person in the room? Right? And some of us, it's like, man, getting alone with my thoughts and my mind can be a very scary thing. Or the randomness, if I say something, we've all heard this illustration. Think of a pink elephant. You can't stop thinking of a pink elephant, you know, and you're like, oh, it got me. I've got some. Think of a clown jumping on a trampoline. A squirrel juggling bowling pins. A very old man belly dancing. I just threw all those thoughts into your mind and you're picturing them. And even now you're processing what I said and probably picturing them. And you finally have gotten to the old man belly dancing. I don't know where that came from. I was just sitting down thinking, yeah, I thought about it. Sometimes thoughts bring an emotion. Think about your very best birthday. Oh, man. That emotion could be awesome. Or your worst birthday. And yeah, thank you. Wow, it's so interactive tonight. I love this. Your worst birthday. It rained on your birthday. Oh. Think about your dad or mom. That can bring happy thoughts or hurtful ones. Out of those thoughts, there can be an emotional attachment that even now, years later, you can feel that emotion just like it was in this moment. Maybe your first pet. Ah, you loved it or you hated it. Stole all the attention, whatever it is. You know, I love this quote by Martin Luther, and he's correlating a bird and our thoughts in this analogy. Can I read it to you? Sweet. You can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop it from making a nest in your hair. Now listen, you might not be able to control thoughts from flying around your lives or over your head, but you can control how you react to them. You can control that. Will you feed that thought, flirt with it, ignore it, or cast it away? See, our thoughts have so much impact and influence. Most of the things that surround our lives were initiated, they were activated by thought. We're constantly thinking, even if it's about nothing, we're thinking about nothing. Our minds are going, processing. You know, many times the most heinous and terrible crimes or acts of violence began with a thought. And sometimes the most creative humanitarian works ever that have been done began with a thought. Do you see the power of our mind and the ability to think? Think about your own lives. Look back, think, ponder upon your own lives. Things that entered your mind and then you saw your life fulfilling them, whether good or whether bad. Or how about this? I remember, I'm going to tell you a story. I go on these tangents. I'm on a story tangent right now. I remember me and my friend, William. It's like, sounds like a fake friend's name. William, he really was. William Snyder, actually, okay? And so we were probably in 4th grade. We were at his house, and William was always thinking of inventions and stuff, and I love that type of stuff. I watch Shark Tank. You guys watch Shark Tank? It's awesome. I love seeing people's like new inventions and these ideas. It's so interesting and it intrigues me. So we're there, and we come up with this brilliant idea. It's a thought, like we could probably fly, or at least like momentarily, we could parachute fly. We've got garbage bags here. Makes perfect sense in that 4th grade mind that if I jump off a high object and I hold the bag over my head, the air will go into it and I will parachute slowly down. Great idea. So we're about to do it off his roof. But his mom is like, what are you guys doing? Get down from the... What do you think we're doing? We're about to parachute with garbage bags. Hefty ones, they're better. So we're like, oh, we get caught. Okay, whatever. So we have another thought. Why don't we do it off the diving board into his pool? Genius, right? At least he'll try. We'll spring off. This is like the testing. Well, we didn't know, though, once we hit the water and went under, the bag would begin to fill with water, and you would get stuck in this garbage bag. It was a freak out moment. No one died. But it was a freak out moment because you can get claustrophobic very quickly. Suddenly it's like, yeah! Ah! Ah! You know, I see William through like the black garbage bag. He's like, ah! Probably happened in like 10 seconds. Felt like a lifetime. So that was a thought. It was an idea. We could fly, we could parachute. Didn't work. All right, but here, reality. Reality of it. That's a funny story, and our thoughts led us to something like that, but how much more serious in our lives, right? How much pain in your life has come from a thought? Maybe you sit down and you ponder on something every day that took place in your past, and it brings pain. Maybe someone hurt you. Maybe a lie that someone spoke over you. Maybe an area you failed at. A fear of something that will happen or could happen. So our thoughts, they can define who we are. They can define who we become. And this is a fact that is proven even through science. That the way we think and what we think about can affect the way we feel and the way we react, the way we even live our lives. Did you ever believe something to be true? You have all this emotion to it, and then you find out it's not true. But yet you still have that emotion. It's like, I know it's not. Prime example, a dream, all right? You have a dream about that person, let's just say John. And in the dream, he grabs you and he punches you in the face. And you're so angry in your dream, right? And you wake up and it felt so real. And then you're like, oh, it's not real. But then you see John that day. And suddenly this like emotion, you're like, John's going to throw down with me right now. And John's just a really nice guy trying to make copies. And you're like, you're ready. And the feelings, it's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Why am I getting like flustered or like my blood's flowing? Like when I see John, oh, stupid dream. Okay. But just look at that. A thought can affect us dramatically, can make us react. It fills us with emotion. Dangerous thing is that a thought can also hold us captive. You can be in bondage through your thoughts. Maybe you've experienced this yourself, or maybe you've seen it in your loved ones, friends, those of you who are close to your heart. You've seen the dangerous effects of a thought. I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 specific areas that I think it happens to our lives and our hearts, our minds, when we see what takes place in the thought life. Many times, our thoughts can distract us. We begin to wander in our attention. We start focusing on the things that have no true significance, right? Maybe we all know it's easy to be distracted. You know, we laugh when we see like the commercials or like a cartoon with a bug that like sees the light and it's like, and it gets, but just for me, and Anna knows this, like I go into any type of electronics store or even like a Target, and those big screen TVs, I'm like, and I just stare at them. I'm like, look at the picture. Look at the picture. And I'm distracted easily, very easily distracted. We've been talking about, we got to get this stuff for the house and all this. I'm like, and don't even know. Anytime in our life. Right now, some of you are like, what is this guy saying? Because the whole time you've been like, look at those lights. Right? So easily distracted. But our thoughts can really distract us. Actually, C.S. Lewis, a great author, he kind of does this in a fictional and in the way of a fantasy in one of his books called The Screwtape Letters. Has anyone read that? It's a great book. The story is, and this is in no way a theology, but the story is an uncle demon writing to his nephew demon. Okay? And in that, it's kind of the background that a demon is assigned to each person, each Christian, to try to bring them away from God and who he is. This is, like I said, this is not a theology. There's no biblical truth behind that. But C.S. Lewis is writing this because he's bringing biblical truth all throughout this story. And this is one of the statements that the uncle demon is saying to his nephew. He's talking about humanity. You can make him do nothing for long periods of time. You can keep him up late at night, not roistering, but staring at a dead fire in a cold room. You can get him to focus on nothing. He says, nothing is very strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in dreary flickering of the mind. Distractions in our thought life can make our whole life go past, and all we've been doing is we've been staring at a dead fire in a cold room, distracted. Another thing is that our thoughts can bring paralysis. Things we can place our mind on can paralyze us, where we can no longer function. Maybe you've seen that in your own life. Maybe you experience that every time you go to that place or you're in that situation. Maybe it's through fear. You're so afraid of something. And when your mind starts thinking on it, you feel like you're just frozen. You can't react to it. You feel in bondage to it. Maybe anxiety. You struggle and you battle with anxiety in your thought life. So much so that you feel like you're locked up in a room. So much so that when you sit down and you begin to think upon these things, it's like you can't even move again, like you are literally paralyzed. We're held captive to our thoughts. Maybe physically or emotionally. So much so you feel like you have chains in your own mind, in that battlefield. But perhaps the most dangerous thing, and I believe it's a gradual process, is when our thoughts begin to corrode who we are. We begin to believe these things these ideas, these thoughts, these words spoken over us, and we dwell on them. Have you ever seen someone dwelling on something? Even obsessing over it? It's like, you're not fully here. If you've ever experienced deep depression, or you have seen someone experience deep depression, they could sit down and stare at a wall because something is happening in their thoughts and in their mind. We might not express this on the outside, and we look fine, but on the inside, slowly, we're corroding. And it's killing us, deteriorating us on the inside of who we are. It begins to eat away the very person that we are meant to be. And the scariest thing is it begins to change us. Have you ever looked at your life? Asked the question, who have I become? Who have I become? What have you let your mind and your thoughts dwell on? Because you could normally track that all the way down to what was happening in your thought life, in your mind. Your mouth and your eyes. What? How does this even connect? Your mouth and your eyes. Listen to this statement. What you feed will lead. Right? What are you putting into your life? What are you putting into your life? Well, come on. You got a good filter. It's in there. It's amazing if you study the brain, all the things that it is taking in and recording in your mind, even things that you don't think you remembered that are in your mind. What you feed in your life will truly lead who you are, who you're becoming. Your eyes. In Scripture, it says the eyes are the windows of the soul. And soul in Scripture is often interchangeable with mind. Your thought life. What are you entertaining and surrounding your life with? You have to ask yourself that question. Really, though. I don't know why my mind is always going this way or that way, or I battle and struggle with this or that. Well, really look. What am I putting into my life? What am I surrounding myself with? What am I entertaining? These are hard questions. But if we don't begin to ask them, we'll never find freedom in our minds and our thoughts. We have to realize what's the source. What does the Lord say, though? Because he says something to us. He brings hope. And I'm always going to bring it back to that. John 1 through 14. In that gospel, the whole gospel, John is talking about revelation. But specifically in chapter 1, he's speaking about Jesus Christ being the revelation, and he gives two descriptions. He describes Jesus as the Word, and he describes Jesus as light. Audible and visible revelations. And I love that he's using that description because he's talking about Jesus being tangible for you and for me. This is where transformation and change begins to take place in our minds. Our minds need to be transformed. Not just happy thoughts. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not just talking about happy thoughts. Think happy thoughts. You know, you're walking through and you have a bad day. You share it with someone and they're like, oh man, sorry to hear that. Just think happy thoughts. And you're like, oh yeah, thanks. Boom, over. You're right back to where it was. Happy thoughts. It's not what we're talking about here. Because you might think those happy thoughts, but really all you've done is you've taken those other things in your mind and you've just kind of pushed them aside, but they're still there. There's a transformation that needs to take place. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says this, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought. It doesn't stop there. To make it obedient to Christ. Self-help and thinking is going to stop right there. Yeah, sure. Take captive every thought. Really own that. But not go the next step. To make it obedient to Christ. It's about Jesus Christ. Not just to invite God into your thought life, but literally to give him your mind. True transformation. The beautiful thing is we are giving it to a God who's so far beyond us. Isaiah 55, 8-9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Our minds are safe. They're not only in the hands of a being who is so far beyond us, but they're in the very hands of the one who with his hands created our minds. Safety in that. But we have to choose what to dwell on. There are practical steps to that. And Philippians 4, 6-9 talks more about that, not to be anxious. And in verse 8, it says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace will be with you. It's a daily transformation. That's why in 2 Corinthians 4:16, it says, do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. I'm going to invite the band to make their way up here. Day by day. It's a daily transformation. It's not just a one-time thing. And people say the greatest battlefield can be your mind, and that's a true statement. It really can. It can be your mind. But daily you have to make a choice to say, Lord, let my mind be conformed to you and who you are. We have a gift of thought. Don't push that away. It's a gift from God. It's the greatest gift from God, yet at the same time, like anything else, it can become something horrific. It can become your greatest weakness. It can become your greatest downfall. You can either build the kingdom of God with your thoughts and your mind, or you can tear it down. You can either build it or you can tear it down. You know what's so cool? Our imagination, right? Animals and primates, well, we're considered an animal and primate, but outside of us in the animal kingdom, there's nothing else living that has imagination. We can like create things in our mind. And we go to movies and these fantasy movies and stuff that we see that. And it's beautiful. We can come up with solutions and ideas. Yet at the same time, that ability to imagine can be something very dangerous. Fantasies can take place, either violent ones, sexual ones, evil ones, that can take place in our minds and our thoughts. At the same time, if we decide to have those creative and wholesome thoughts, we can define and rebuild things, bring solutions. See, when you consecrate, when you dedicate your mind as a sacred space to God, you will begin to see what he can do. And why don't we stand? If we could stand right now, because I want to read one last thing to you. What I felt the Lord had just said to my heart while I was preparing this. And today, saying to you and to me, this is what he's making a promise to you and I. It says, if you consecrate, if you give, if you decide that your mind will become and your thoughts will become a sacred place, you give it to me. Watch what I can do. A place of pain in your thoughts, he will bring his healing presence. A place of fear, he overwhelms with his love. Where anxiety once was, his peace invades. A place of distraction, which has made you stagnant, he brings revelation that gives you passion to press on. Where depression once paralyzed, he overruns with the power of his joy. A place of rejection, he overcomes with his desire to be with you. Where you have felt unworthy, he carries you into his presence. Where you have felt empty, he produces the well springs of life. Where you have wandered into confusion, he rescues you with the depth of his wisdom. Where you feel distant and lost, he will embrace you. And where death once reigned, he conquers with the resurrection of life. Don't just bring him into your mind. Give him your thoughts. Give him your mind. Full surrender. And it's the only place I know that when I fully surrender, I find true freedom. That doesn't make sense. It's paradoxical. When I fully surrender my thoughts, my mind unto him, I will gain true, eternal freedom. So let's just respond in that now, just worshiping our Lord.